Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to another Fusion Free Support Friday. That being said, as you guys know, my name is Fusion Phil over here at jitcadcam. I'm going to give some people some time to get in here. Well, I see all of you out there currently. If you want to go ahead and let me know down below, do I sound good? Do I look good? Other than the fact that the beard, of course, has come back. I know a lot of you were concerned and decided to call me or email me telling me you couldn't take me serious without the beard. But here I am, back again. We took last week off because of Thanksgiving. Of course, I ate way too much, and I had to take a nap on Friday, I think, to sleep some of it off. But awesome. I see Dylan out here. I see Harm. Great. Looks like I sound good. I look good. That's very great, as always. I love to see you guys on these Fridays show up. As I like to say, you show up to see what I can screw up, right? Whether it be my video feed or my audio every week. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and keep the beard. Okay, I will. I'll let my wife know that you said that, Dylan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. I did get a special request from somebody, and that was a part in particular to start with inside of our free support, where you guys come up with, of course, nothing but the best questions and problems for me to solve live. I did also just respond to somebody on YouTube, or not on YouTube, but on Facebook. If you're here, you can actually use the support email down below to send me your file, and I can troubleshoot your file here live today. So let's start with the basics, of course. Let's get a part open. Now, this is a customer that watched one of my videos that I created before, but as you can see, this is a pretty crazy part when you get down to the fact that, one, it is a very large diameter part, and two, in the case of this customer, they don't have live tooling on their lathe. So they're actually going to do a combination of the lathe as well as the mill. But as you can imagine with this feature here, they've actually set their mill up so that it's tilted at an angle. So as you can see, I wanted to give you guys an example of the part. We are going to use a tooling ball on this. And like I said, I did make a video about the tooling ball, but I'm going to show you a little easier way to structure your file for the better, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by opening a blank file, and we're going to go ahead and call this the machining for this file. And then from there, I'm actually going to bring in my components. Now, you can drag and drop these components, or you could do a right-click insert. A lot of different ways to do this at the end of the day. So we're going to go ahead and insert into current design this time. As you see, the concept is still the same. We did luck out, though, the way this was all designed is that this actual tooling ball was designed at the same origin as this part that was modeled up. Now, if that wasn't the case, the nice thing is we could do a couple of things to make sure that it does line up properly. And I could do so, for one, is I've actually turned off how to ground to parent automatically, so I can choose when something is ground. And so you guys know you could actually turn these off in your settings if you didn't realize. Found this the other day, of course, is in our assemblies, you have first component grounded to parent. Now, whether or not you do this is up to you. You may want to figure out your use case. The nice thing is as you just saw, without this stuff grounded, I have full range to move around my components. I say components because your bodies do need to be components to have this freedom. As well, you do need a timeline on down at the bottom to which you can turn on by right-clicking and hit Capture Design History. Now, I do see mine does say do not capture design history, but the idea is still the same, right? Is I went ahead and turned mine off. I may ground this first part, or I may actually do a joint for that first part, but all that's going to do for me is make it so I can't click and drag this part out of the way. Second thing I'm going to do is a joint now. Again, I want to go based off this edge, so for you guys out there that didn't know, if I put my mouse on this cylinder and then hold control, you can notice I can actually snap to those end edges very quickly. So again, we're going to go from the shoulder face down to this face. Again, I put my mouse on there, hold control, and then I can click. And as you're going to see, that's going to snap right in place. Again, we did luck out that the way everything was modeled, the origin works to our advantage. But as you guys can see, very straightforward. All we did was put our tooling ball on our part. So let's go ahead and pivot over into our manufacturing side. So what I'm going to do now is, one, this is a newer feature to Fusion, is because he actually already machined a custom tooling ball, it's asking me if I want to bring that CAM data in. So I'm going to say no here because that was a separate part. It was made externally. You know, it really doesn't matter because what I'm really manufacturing is the actual cone here. So from here, let's go ahead and create our first setup. Of course, we're going to do this on the lathe. we need to select our model. And in this case, you could just simply click that one body, or I like to actually go out. And again, this is why you start to get OCD with time, that you want to click the component. Again, there's a reason why you saw me insert these into this design. Again, keeping timelines nice and clean and straight. From there, we're going to actually machine the backside of this part first. Let's go ahead and flip our Z. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now, notice how that tooling ball did disappear. A lot of you guys ask me this question about the tooling ball. And well, the reason why is down here at the bottom is I've actually turned on all of my synchronizations so that if I was, and you'll see this in a minute, let's say I wanted to create my second setup, right? So I'm going to duplicate this setup. We're going to go in, we're going to flip our Z axis back the other way. And then I'm going to use something like from preceding setup. And we're going to say continuous rest machining, right? So as you're noticing, when I activate my setup, my part automatically flips around from one to the other. Now, again, if we were to add in that tooling ball at any time, let's just say that tooling ball is a part of our fixture, same thing will happen. So that tooling ball will now turn on when I need it or turn off when I don't need it based on that synchronization. Again, we're just going to go ahead and undo that tooling ball real quick and back to our part. So if those of you don't know, I've made videos on simple turning type activities. Again, I'm a big fan of using templates once you find what works best for you guys. I have a 2-axis lathe template. As you're going to see, here's all my tooling. I'm going to go ahead and regenerate. However, I'm getting errors, right? And the reason why I could be getting errors is a lot of reasons. One, am I doing turning? Yes, I am. So let's verify that. Let's go into our actual tool path and see what's having an issue. And what we're encountering right now is the first issue that I see a lot of, right? So normally we think Fusion is going to do a spun profile. And in the case of this part, it actually did not achieve a spun profile. So we need to do something to remedy that. Now, there's a lot of things you guys can do out there. And what's going to happen is I'm going to go back first off to my initial setup. And as you can see, I have spun profile. So one thing I could do is I could undo spun profile. And I've seen this work in the past. However, you're starting to see some of these tool paths now be generated because it's now seeing a completely different profile. Now, this could hurt you at the end of the day by unchecking spun profile. So I'm going to show you another way just in case. But it does look like by unchecking that spun, we will actually have problems down here at the tip, which is what you're seeing is that purple profile, yellow is my stock, and then white is basically empty voids. So once you get down to the tip of this part, the way it's pulling that profile, we could actually gouge into our part, and we would see that on our next setup. So let's try something else here that might work. So again, I'm going to go into my setup. Let's go ahead, and in this case, we're going to turn back on spun profile. Now, I do kind of luck out on this part, right? So as you can see, my x-axis is pointed up into an area of that part that is kind of a clean profile, but also the direction of my y-axis could be used to my advantage as well. So in this case, maybe I say I want to pick my x-axis, I'm going to turn on my origin, and as you're going to see on the origin, the blue line normally is your z, but that's z from the origin, and I could actually pick that face or a plane to be able to set that direction. So in this case, it's not letting me to do it. I need to update my Fusion, so I might actually pick a different profile edge as well. Again, this is the luxury of having hard edges on your part to pick them in real time. So let's use this edge. Let's flip our X back the other way. Let me go ahead and undo that. It doesn't look like my X is flipping because this is why you guys tune into this every week, it seems, is to watch me do things and have problems in real time. So again, we're going to go ahead and undo that flat edge. Let's use this flat edge. Again, your X is now pointing in a very strange direction, so I might actually change from Z and X to Z and Y. Again, I don't want to bore you guys a ton. What we're really looking for is to align our X-axis because our tools come in on X in a direction that works for us, right? So again, I can pick this edge here. My X is now pointed vertical. Just making a mental note that if there was a seam right here or any features, that could cause our problem, right? So let's go ahead and regenerate our tool path. Again, this is why I like this part, because there's a lot of technicalities with this part that have caused problems to my customer, because Fusion does kind of have a little bit of a bug when it comes to certain profiles. So again, is the way we remedy that is either by adjusting our spun profile or changing our X direction. So again, let's go ahead and regenerate. As you're seeing, we're getting a completely different spun profile. And we're actually, as funny as it is, we're getting a spun profile even though we didn't check spun profile, right? So just a little bit of a tip to you guys. Again, if you know what you're trying to do, and you can see here, those little knockouts have disappeared, right? Not going to bore you guys again. I don't want to bore you to death with all this craziness. There's no grooving needed on this part. We've basically turned it from one side to the other, right? What I'm looking for is to turn this piece of stock into a blank for us to use. Again, a few things that you guys may or may not know. We could set a selection edge to machine 2. And then one cool thing is with tangential extension here, you're going to see is it's going to come from this edge and continue straight. Had I picked this lower edge, it would actually continue down behind my part, which is something I may or may not want. Again, here's another quick tip for you guys while we wait for those questions to come in. We're going to go ahead and derive. We could do our finishing right off of our actual initial roughing. And there you can see that rough or finishing toolpath has been populated. Again, flipping our part around to the other direction. We could take these toolpaths. Spent all day yesterday training somebody on Lathe, so it was kind of fun to go back to my roots. But as you can see, going back the other way, I can just quickly copy and paste and then regenerate those toolpaths, right? So there's my roughing back the other way. And then there's my finishing profile as well. Hopefully there's some questions about this. I am going to pull up Discord. If any of you guys are in Discord, want to join our Discord channel for people to get help as well. We do have a Discord channel. I am also going to go ahead and pull up our ticket system and make sure there's nothing in there. Hopefully you guys are having a better week than it seems that I had this week. It's been nothing but chaos of broken posts this week. So again, I'm going to go ahead and kick off that origin so it's not in our way. And as you guys can see, we've now turned our part both ways. Nothing fancy. I'm not doing any of the inside work. Obviously, I think you guys understand how to do drilling and tapping and things like that. Now, again, with that all completed to this point, this is where we're going to change directions and actually set up our milling, right? So one thing funny about the way I'm doing this is actually how I kind of program parts. I tend to throw ideas at it where I'm not doing 100% first time through. I would like to get a system down that works for work holding or how I'm going to actually manufacture one side from the other. But let's go ahead and switch gears into our milling. Again, stock from preceding. I'm going to go ahead and turn on continue rest machining. If you guys haven't done so, I would highly recommend that you click these three little dots and save continuous rest machining because you always want to pull that model through as you're utilizing Fusion 360. So again, we're doing milling. I do need to set my XYZ. However, I'm going to hit OK here because I'm going to do a few things here to fix what's going to happen later. And I just saw a question come in. Let's see what we got. So you have an index drill in my lathe with the tool offset being the center line. What would be the best way to use that tool as a boring bar to open up the hole? All right, I will visit that question in a second. I always know. Why do I know? When I saw index drill and I'm talking about lathe, everybody wants to know is how can you drill and then how can you use that same drill to go in and do a boring operation? And I'll show you here in a minute. But let's go ahead and fix what we have, right? So again, I'm in my setup. I need to go through a few things I need to do is one, I have my model. Two, I'm going to add my fixture in. So again, as we have that tooling ball now, one of the few things that I will need to do is set my orientation for that machine. So what you're seeing here is something that my lovely customer forgot to do when he watched my video, which some of you may be able to guess. I'm going to go ahead and give you a moment to guess why I actually set up my Z direction, which is going to be this face. And then because this is going to sit, you can imagine at an angle with a rotary at an angle, we also need to set our X direction for our rotation. Again, our rotation is going to be based around a center line. So I may actually set X down the center here. Now, if we look at this from a different view, and this will be a little tricky, is even though this is flat here, my X is now still running down center of rotation as if we were going to put this on that rotary, right? And this is the key element. But now to get this point, which is going to be a selected point, I want to put it in the center of the sphere. But what you're noticing is I can't because there is no reference point to grab in the center of the sphere. So there's a reason why I've kind of set this up to be able to do this type of things, right? Is I am now going to go back and we're going to make sure that our fixture comes through and we activate. Looks like I failed to select the fixture. So let's do that first. Then we have our tooling ball visual. And we're also going to fix that other error that you guys keep setting up. So I'm going to go back to the original design workspace. Now there's a couple ways you guys can do this. Because I have left this linked, I have a two-way street and a two-way connection, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click this pencil, and I can edit this actual external component right here in real time, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to place a joint origin. And as you're going to notice, I do not have joint origin. Now, the reason why I do not have a joint origin here is because the way that actual file is structured. So we can go ahead and open that file as well and see as to why there is not a joint origin inside of here. Now, some of you may or may not know this is certain things you cannot do with what's called edit in place. And one of those is a joint origin by default. So as you can see, I'm placing that joint origin in the center of my sphere. Upon saving here, but you're going to notice when we go back to our machining file, we now have to bring through our latest and greatest. Again, it's now updated and we have that lovely joint origin. So if I go ahead and transition back to manufacture, guys, I do see your questions coming in. I appreciate it. I also see the whopping 18 of you live view. I think the record is 24, but let's go ahead and fix these few things here real quick. Again, his question was, hey, I've got the tooling ball in here. How do I use that to my advantage? Well, as you can see, by adding that joint origin and using that joint origin to set my WCF's position, he lucks out with a probe. Now he can go in and probe that tooling ball and use that for his work offset for all of his milling. Now here's another tip for you guys is whenever I'm doing anything on my fourth axis or programming anything for a fourth axis, I like to use work offset 59. Now, I'm not using machine definition here, which means I don't get the lovely printout that tells you which one we're using. So I would have to go with the traditional method, which would be 1 is 54, 2 is 55, so forth and so on. And if I remember off the top of my head, I think it is 7 is 59. But again, I like G59 on my machine just because it's a work offset I'm usually not using for anything else to be able to set that position, right? So again, super easy for you guys to be able to set something up like this. Again, another way you could do this is if you wanted to go off the back center, again, we could do a selected point, and that selected point could be the center down here. Again, the idea is the way Fusion works with probing is we can probe this sphere and it auto does the math from that location. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and fix this next little warning, and then we're going to jump into all these questions that I see you guys out there with. So the reason why we're getting errors is, again, because of the way the spun profiles are coming through. These are affecting the way a lot of our tool paths are being affected and how that is going to end up in our actual operations of our milling with the continuous rest machining, of course. So again, continuous rest machining cannot verify because the stock metal section in both setups is the same. So we can go ahead and fix that as well. We're going to go ahead and go back to our stock from preceding, and everything should come through now. And I have my visual stock turned off. And just like that, you can see again, as I've already visited, that spun profile problem. So with that, let's go ahead and visit some of these questions real quick. So let's talk about the index drill and boring, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this first setup. Again, my XYZ is here. Let's go ahead and throw on this part a section analysis so that we can see the inside cavity, right? As you can see now, we have an area to be able to see how that tool path is going to work. But let's start with the drilling, right? So I'm going to go ahead and select a drill. And I'm just going to use generic tooling, guys. I know a lot of you guys probably have something custom set up, but I know off the top of my head, the hole in this part is much bigger than expected. So let's go ahead and go with a 3/4 inch drill. So with that, you can see that drill is obviously smaller than my hole, so we'll make a couple of step overs with actually going in and boring. Now, your drill may be a flat bottom, but the system will still be the same, right? So I'm going to pick my whole face. In this case, I'm going to pick the very bottom. I'm going to auto merge that so that it brings my hole up from that bottom surface to the top of my model, so I'm not plunging into my part. And basically, there's your standard drilling procedure. But if I wanted to go in now and start boring outwards, I need a couple pieces of information. Well, I'm going to create my turning profile rough, and we're going to create a boring bar, right? Now, the reason why you have to create a boring bar is because Fusion isn't going to allow us to use that drill bit, right? So again, as we're going to go in with turning bore. Now, from there, there's a lot of information you guys can plug in. The real important one is basically, how is your cutter width, right? Now, keep in mind, this is radial. So if we went in with a 3/4 inch drill, we need to make this 375, or you could do 0.75 divided by 2, right? So now we've created our actual tool to represent the diameter of our drill. From here, we can go back to our actual tool path. And as you're seeing, that tool is basically 3/4 from tool tip into our center point. Now, our starting radii is our inner radius. And what we need to do is start with a diameter, right? And now that diameter, again, is going to be 0.75, which is our drill. And then we can set our clearance. So when you go in and bore, you're going to want to bore in and then come back out. So I like to set mine based on inner radius. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it whatever the back off distance I want. In the case of this part, we might actually shrink that down to like 15. And again, that orange represents basically your clearance after the pass, right? As you're going to see now is that tool is going to go in, and let's get that stock out of the way, is our tool is going to come in and it is going to bore across and then only back off a little bit, retract out, come back in. Again, we're using the same tool, or we're not using the same tool. We've had to lie to Fusion about one thing or the other, which would mean is these two tools need to line up in our tool library with the same numbers and same offsets. Now, you may need to use different offsets in order to do drilling in this case. So what I would do is I would go into that tool 2, tool 3 scenario, right? If I edit this tool, what you're going to need to do is in your post-processor side of things, you do have your tool number, which would be 2, which is the same. Now, I may use a different compensation to bring that tool out. Again, because it is a turning tool, you have two offsets. You have like a length or a Z and an X for diameter. So you may actually set this up to be, offset 22 when boring, but still tool 2 or pocket 2. So I hope that helps you guys. I know my tools aren't the cleanest, but that is a rough workflow for you out there to be able to run through. I do see somebody out there saying, thank God for Fusion Phil. That's awesome. I love to hear it. I see another question as well. Let me get my other screen pulled around here so I can see this a little bit better. Is it possible to mill a hex in the middle of a shaft using a 2-axis lathe? So technically, if you're going to surface it, like you said, with a ball end mill, there is some hope. So let's go ahead and do a hex in the middle of a shaft. So I'm going to go ahead and pop open a brand new design. We're going to go ahead and model this up very down and dirty. So we're going to say, maybe it's a 1-inch shaft. And then from that 1-inch shaft in the middle somewhere, we are going to create a polygon. And whatever size that is going to be on your guys' end. Of course, you guys are probably dealing with pre-modeled stuff, possibly. But here is my hex. And we're going to go ahead and turn our sketch back on. There's one side of our shaft. We're going to do this one more time. Again, now we're going to do two-sided, because I could start one here and then bring the other one out. And as you're seeing, I now have a hex in the middle of the shaft. I would love for whoever asked that question to show me the application for this. And I'm assuming something is going to clamp on there if I had to make a guess, because I don't know what else you would really put on that. But with that all being said, is we can now switch back to manufacture. He is asking about a 2-axis lathe, and that 2-axis lathe has live tooling. So we're going to go ahead and set this up. We're going to say this is our turning mill turn. Doesn't really matter which way our Z goes. Guys, my mouse is dying also. If you see, when I go one direction, it likes to go to the opposite direction initially. But the tool path you're kind of looking for is you're going to need to do something with a milling path. And what you're going to use is actually going to be a rotary tool path. Now there's rotary pocket, there's rotary parallel. There's a lot of options here that will work for this. But as you're going to see is you need to set this up so that it is working around the outside of your part, of course, right? So our rotary axis would actually be around Z. Backwards in my thinking. You guys got me all over the place, going from lathe into full fourth axis simultaneous. Again, we can set our front. So I'm just going to use a selection. Our back is now over here. And with that, we'll just give this a simple ball end mill. Awesome. I figured, you know, it occurred to me the moment I read your comment that it would be wrench flats, right? Just something to hold on to. So it probably doesn't even need to be a hex, right? It could just be two flats. But again, we're going to go for a ball end mill here. I am going to grab nothing fancy. Again, as you guys have seen, I'm a firm believer of giving it the bare minimums and seeing how that gets us. So what you're seeing first off is we are spiraling down the part and we are stepping up onto the outside on both ends. Now, this is a big thing. You guys saw this real time. I don't know why you guys do this to me, but you go out, you click all these buttons in the software, and then you got to message me to tell me why it's broken or I can't do it, right? You saw it. I picked a tool. I gave it a little bit of a containment, and then I just said, okay, because it's very important. You guys have to remember this. Get a path on the part. I don't want it to spiral down the part. Okay, let's start there. Well, seeing how I want to modify how my blue lines are interacting with my part, a lot of people forget that, you know, you can color code things here. So our passes tab has blue lines on it. So if I go down here, my rotary pass doesn't want to be spiral. I want it circular in this case, or I want it a line, right? So what you're going to see is it's now going to run, you know, line down my part left and right. I'm assuming this is a part of what you're looking for is the ability to just machine those surfaces. And again, this is so that he can get a wrench on there. I do see somebody out there gave me $1 to my stream. I appreciate that, Spacey. Thank you very much. I think you're the first one to do a stream donation. So as you can see, again, as we've basically limited this down to say, run along the axis or run around the axis or spiral, right? Now, to get it to stay away from these walls, there's a lot of ways to do it. I don't think one is right, one is wrong. However, you could use the new avoid touch surfaces, or if you're like me, you could actually just say, you know what, I want to be negative 0.125 from this end, and I want to be positive 0.125 from that end. Now, if you find yourself doing this stuff a lot, I would also recommend that you guys could go in and you could utilize parameters like tool diameter, things like that, right? So as you can see, you can very easily get that down. And again, we could make that even further. You know, maybe I keep it away from, you know, like, what is it, 27 instead of 25, just enough to stay off that wall, right? And as you're going to see, now it's basically all flat and it's staying off both those walls. So you could send me the file. An easy way to send me that file is there is a support email down in the bio of this video. If you if you write an email, attach it to the email and send it over. You could also do things that involve, think about this real quick, is you have that ability to also attach it to that email. You could also do a share public link. So if you don't know how to get it out of Fusion, there's a couple of ways. You could go, one is export, and then save it as an F3D. You could also, if you're willing to share it with the audience, you have the ability to actually create a share file link. Now, you don't see that on my file here because I have yet to save this file. But if I was to go into this tooling ball, I could share file link. And then what I would want to do is turn it on to start with. And then I would also like to allow it to be downloaded and copy and paste this link in chat. Or again, you could put that link on that email and send it over. But I think at this point, you're kind of seeing it's not the worst of things when you have the rotary toolpath. The idea is with the rotary toolpath, your tool always points to center. So again, if I wanted to just go around that hex, again, same rules apply, right? So I can go over here. I want to change my blue lines. I want it to be circular. And again, now you're going to see circular. We could run around that thing with a ball end mill. Outside of that, I see more and more of you guys coming and going. If you guys have any questions at any time, I'm here to answer them as much or as little as I can. Feel free to put those messages in chat. Might have to take a moment to actually thank those of you that have bought me beers all week. So that's probably why Spacey is the first one to put $1 into my YouTube donation. Most of you guys are using the link down below because if you find anything useful, obviously the likes, the subscribes, the sharing of the content helps a ton. But if you want to give a little bit more than that, feel free by using the Buy Me a Beer link down below. All those donations, with the exception of the one that I drink here live, is usually an energy drink, definitely go to drinking beer. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you guys. Does anybody else have any questions? Anybody else curious about anything else that they've had problems with in Fusion? Kind of went quick, fast, and in a hurry here for the first few minutes. And now usually we slow down a little bit in the middle if you guys didn't know. It does give me the perfect opportunity to tell you guys that obviously we are live quite a bit throughout the week. We do the workflow Wednesdays. We do free support Fridays. You guys have suggestions for any videos as well that you want to see or things you want in particular to see. Any problems you've had, post edits, we're more than open to try to do what we can during this live content to answer those questions. So I'm going to give you guys a few more minutes. I do see you guys slowing down. Again, if you were somebody out there that was doing parts like this, when you go to post out something like this, I would recommend that you pay attention to what post you use. Now, some of the post processors already have built in whether or not you have a Y-axis. So if I was to go look at certain Haas posts, some of these like the ST10 does not have a Y-axis associated to it. Also, if you were looking at something that would be along the lines of a Doosan or a Fanuc post, some of these may or may not have a Y-axis setting that you would need to use as well and turn on based on your machine. Now, this is a very generic Fanuc post, so you may actually need to use machine definition, which we have videos on how to set up machine definition, which will control your Y-axis nowadays. I see Matt out there. What's up, Matt? Thanks for joining us this week, as you always do. Pretty wild that somebody said that you were a scammer in the Facebook group earlier this week. I was laughing. I was like, this guy, I've met this guy. He's not a scammer. I don't even think he asks people for money. Best way to mill under a multi-axis part with a lollipop cutter. Can you send me that part file? I would love to see the part file or the use case that you're looking for. King Marley, awesome to see you. Let's see what else. Did you manage to have a look at adding work offsets to the UMC post when dynamic work offset is enabled? So I would need to see the use case much closer as to what you're trying to do with the multiple work offsets. Usually you would cancel dynamic work offset and then turn it back on when jumping across work offsets. And that should be set up in your post. Can you give me an example of core tools? Core tools, I'm assuming you're talking about mold cavities, mold cores. Yeah, so Brett, awesome question. Can you do a hex without live tooling? You 100%, or with live tooling, no Y-axis. So from a programming standpoint, you 100% can inside of Fusion. So the cool thing is here is, again, I'm just going to go in and make something very simple. And I do need to mention this because if you guys know me very well, I tend to make something and it ends up like now where it's massive. And then I go to machine it and I put a 1/2-inch end mill on it and it's like a tiny little tool, right? So again, here's my hex. Back into my manufacturer side of things. I'm going to go ahead and create my setup. Again, we're going to go turning. Select my Z-axis. A little strange this time, as you can imagine, because I'm not using a rotary axis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my origin from when I drew this to create my Z. And now with that being said, if I go milling 2D contour, again, using simple edges here, grab a tool, not a big deal. What tool? Obviously, you're going to refine this workflow, but there's my actual machining tool path, right? So again, Brett, based on your machine, as I always tell people, is your post may already have it or may require you to change it, right? So again, based on a Haas turning post, and if we select a machine, ST10 here, again, we'll copy that over for me to delete later. Now, some of these posts, again, is got live tooling. We got to make sure that we have that checked. but this post does not have y-axis built in it. So when we post out, what you're going to see is it's automatically creating that G-code based on using polar milling, right? And you guys are throwing out beers left and right now. I love it. I got to actually scroll up in chat. You guys are making this difficult on me. I might have to get a YouTube chat monitor around here to watch everything. So Brett, as you can see, based on your post processor, everything is going to be controlled there. Now, if you were somebody that did have a y-axis machine, but you still didn't want to use the y-axis, as most of you have seen in some of my other videos, I'm going to go ahead and select this post and hit edit. In some of these post processors, of course, this is just a generic turning post. So let's go for the Doosan, or should I say the DN Solutions post. So again, we'll go into our default library. And everything is alphabetical now. So there was DN Solutions. Oop, up one more. And there's our mill turn post, right? So if I go ahead and copy this over and I hit that lovely little pencil, there's options up here at the top to actually force things. Again, based on this post processor, if you wanted an advanced mill turn post, this is a very advanced mill turn post that is controlled by machine definition. But there is also things that you can do inside of these posts. For example, you could search things like y-axis, you know, turret 1 has y-axis. And again, we go over stuff like this all the time with you guys. And if you don't want to mess with it, you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to get you guys either the solution provided at no charge or quote that in the most cost-effective way to get you guys set up. Let's see what other questions we have going on. So you opened a ticket. Awesome. You can email it directly to me too. So I see your ticket. I see your part. So you guys give me a minute while I get this loaded up here. Go ahead and upload this file. And then what I'm going to do is I got to jump back over here while that's loading. Let's keep going down through chat. What else do we have? I'm on Fusion Insider. Is it okay for me to send you a file? Yeah, you can send me a file from the Insider. I believe my version is also, but I just have nothing turned on. So guys, if you guys didn't know, there's a secret Insider version of Fusion where you get access to all kinds of things. One is something that I've seen recently that is probably the #1 asked question that everybody wishes Autodesk would have. And I will say it's a reason, if you guys didn't see, why I use the River Rubicon background. And that's all I'm going to tell you. But it's something that you could see and get firsthand on, as well as advanced toolpaths and things of that nature. So, know the tools that you would normally keep in your machine. All right, right now I remove every tool, every job, and then I press new tools, but everyone says that you need a core set. Okay, all right, I get what standardized tooling is what I call that, standardized tooling. And we'll visit that here in a second. I appreciate that question. That is a very good question. I was going to go ahead and run a video. I don't know if maybe I'll do it next Wednesday. It's called Gauge Length 2.0, but it will do exactly what you're thinking, right? So here is the actual part that was provided to us. And the question is, you know, how do we achieve a hex, which is funny. You guys see this? I'm going to show you this. You guys will laugh about this. Look how simple my design is and look how beautiful this design is, right? But it doesn't really matter because I am going to just go over here. I'm going to copy what I've done and I'm going to paste that over here onto his part, right? So again, we're going to go down to paste, going to edit my toolpath, right? Because we did select a front and a back. I am also noticing here now is somebody is using what didn't get us to the moon as a unit. So that's more than okay, but I just need a quick reference. Okay, my Z is over here to the right. Let's go ahead and do our front edge here. Our back edge is here. Again, I'm using an inch tool, as funny as it is, on a millimeter part. And as you're going to see is invalid back reference. So let's go ahead and adjust that one more time. It looks like it actually double selected for me. It didn't switch to my back reference. There we go. We've now narrowed down our area to work with. And there is our tool to go ahead and wrap around that part. So again, because he's not too concerned about the finish or how pretty this part's going to be, we can, of course, add more step overs to get it much nicer than what it is. But this tool is always going to point at center of the rotation around, correct? So when we look at this, I'm going to go ahead and throw this up. We're going to find out real quick how good this simulation is. So let's go ahead. It says lots of issues found. Of course, there's always lots of issues. And we can turn on stock so you guys can see this a little prettier. Let me get you some more room to see. Any of you out there putting messages in chat? I see chat kind of going crazy right now. I will be getting over to those here in a second. And as you can see, he's doing his threading now. And then there we are doing our rotary tool path around to create those flats as best as we can. And again, that tool is always going to point to center, which means it is a live fourth axis move in a mill, or in his case, it would be his third, his 2-axis kind of setup, because he's staying in X with the tool. And what that would look like more on his machine, if we went ahead and said the tool would sit still, is something a little bit more like this, the way it would run inside of his lathe. I assume his tooling is also on the back, so if we really want to get technical on this. So again, just a little different system, a little different way to look at something like this to achieve what he's trying to do. But that's it. You guys saw it. I programmed it on one part. I was able to copy and paste it right on over. And as you saw, very easy to implement that same exact strategy, right? So I'm now seeing this. So, I mean, oh yeah, I always forget about that. So the issue is with my website, I utilize a tax software, like a third-party tax software. And I don't think they understand that you guys are trying to buy from outside the country. So there is a limit for us at Autodesk, as an Autodesk reseller, I should say, to only sell in North America. So I've limited my taxing to only North America, right? But you foreigners can always put in super chats. I promise you, I will still drink super chat beers. And thank you for the very first super chat. So you would need the machining extension correct, because this is a live rotary move. I'm going to say rotary live fourth axis move because of the way that Fusion 360 is set up. There is no other way, honestly, because even if you went in, and now some of you would say is like, oh, you could do a parallel toolpath. You could, however, you're still going to need to set up fourth axis, which again is required by the machining extension to do so. Now, the good thing is about the machining extension, if you guys didn't know, I say machining, I'm an old salty dog, manufacturing extension is one, you do get a free trial of it. So you can go out and you could do the free trial. It's 10 to 14 days. I can't remember. They change it all the time. You could also buy it by the day, buy it, in a block of a week. There's lots of purchasing options, right? I am a reseller. I cannot transact you for a day or for a week or anything like that, but I can sell it to you for a year. So if you guys are looking to buy Fusion, which is 25% off right now, you can buy it directly through me and help support this channel and the things that we do. But again, Autodesk has made it very simple that if you only need it for one job, obviously you put that price on the quote, but you could go out and purchase the tokens or the credits or whatever they are to go ahead and purchase a day or a couple of days worth of use. So I'm going to go ahead and answer another question that I did see come through. So how do you standardize your tooling? So I am going to put this out there to you guys. So there's a lot of ways to do standardized tooling inside of Fusion. Now, what I recommend to most people is you can create a shop crib, as you see I've done here, and then you can create machines, right? So based on your machines in your shop, what tools are being ran where, and then you can actually store those tools against the machine so you know what's in the carousel of last used, right? So in the case of this part that I actually have open, this is test 2. Let's go ahead and jump down test 2, right? So I just ran this on my fancy TL1 top of the line machine, right? So I just got done running it. I'm going to take all of my tools. I can simply copy, actually not duplicate. Can we undo that now? Of course we can't. Let's go ahead and delete those ones that are all selected. There it is. There's the mistake of the day, right, guys? Duplicated all my tools, and now you get to see me undo all these problems, right? So I'm actually going to go to setup 1. I'm going to highlight all my tools. This time I'm going to hit copy, not duplicate. And then I can go down to that machine and I can paste those tools in, right? So the next time I'm programming, if I go to my shop crib, notice how it's still breaking this down by individual machines. Same thing would happen. Let me just grab another tool here. Let's say we copy this tool and I just stick this in the shop crib. Actually, I don't think it's going to let me do it because it's got everything organized. So I can't use my shop crib because it's a folder, but I could add a library, as you guys could imagine, as shop crib. This is kind of how I start to organize things, right? So again, any tools that aren't currently in a machine sits here in my shop crib. Here's the tools last used on my machines, and it's a little bit of copying back and forth. Now, I would recommend that any of you out there that are like me, please complain down below in my video. Tell Autodesk that you want a better organizational system for your tooling, right? Like, I personally can't believe the way we can link files and stuff. I should be able to, just like you guys saw me when I did that, put that tooling ball in there, is link this tool back to a library. So if I update it in my setup or if I update it in my library, it's a two-way street, right? Like, can I push that data and pull that data? So again, this is some way that I do it. Another way that I would do it is, again, a lot of machines allow up to 200 offsets, right? A lot of you know I am a big fan of a 1/2-inch end mill, right? So with that being said, this might be tool 2, or this could be even tool 102, right? None of that really matters. But when you start to get into more of a production environment, or if you have presetters on your machine, I am going to do a video about this, but to give you guys a sneak peek, is we can actually utilize what's called a gauge length, where you can use a height gauge, which I have a photo of it. I'm going to save this content. I'm going to tease you guys. You guys got to pay attention to the Workflow Wednesdays. But we can actually plug in a number in Fusion that you could pull offline on your machine. And then when you create that G code, it automatically overwrites your tool. So that means tool 102, in this case, can be ran on any machine that hypothetically has a Cat 40 holder. Again, making things much easier and much cleaner so that you could move jobs from machine to machine. So again, I see a lot of different comments come in. I'm going to go ahead and keep scrolling down here. How do you move the tool location in the Haas mini mill machine simulation? Trying to simulate with, how do you move the tool location? What tool location are you asking for? Tool change location? So I see you out there. Awesome, GT. Thanks for letting me know you can hear me. I think you might have joined a little late and you're way back in the video. But again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Feel free to message me directly. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the support area and check my email. Looks like one of you signed up for the portal. We did get that part with the hex. Awesome. Let me just get some things cleaned up, make sure that I'm not missing anybody. I am going to go ahead and resolve that ticket, of course. We've answered the hex with the rotary toolpath. Oh, George Roberts. There we go. I didn't. So the the old GT Robo had me going. But George Roberts is in the chat, guys. If you guys don't know, he is a huge name when it comes to machine simulation. He's done tons with posts. He is the one to go after. It's funny because Bearded Works just asked about a machine simulation question on the fact. G200 on lathe. Do you want to give me an example of G200 and what you're looking for? Also, JC, I see you out there. You're from Cali. What part of Cali are you from? And for those of you wondering, no, not moonshine. It's just lemonade. George, I know there's some big things coming down the way, but definitely the way the tooling can be linked together between the libraries would be, I know for me and other people, is like, why can't it be as simple as, you know, like I've finished this part and I hit save and it, you know, it says dump tools back to inventory or something, right? Like, how can we make that workflow cleaner and simpler for especially you job shop folks out there? That I came from a job shop. And you never know what's in the machine, right? You spend more time looking at the carousel than you do machining. Awesome. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes. In the meantime, let's see. We're going to go ahead and check. I do want to put it out there is, let's see here. High desert area. All right. My wife's from San Diego. So I spent 8 years down there in San Diego at Miramar. But as you guys know, I'm going to pause here because some of you done it. I've seen the super chat. Somebody's already bought me some beers today. I love it. I appreciate it. I don't drink beers on chat or on stream, but I will drink this lovely energy drink that is brought to you by the person that submitted the first part of this actual area of utilizing the cooling ball on a part with a multi-process. You guys can also, like I said, you have the ability to use me as a reseller if you're in North America. You can also buy services through us, whether it be post edits, custom training, anything and everything, right? So to all of you, thank you. Beat this to get through the rest of this live stream. Starting to feel a little down. G200 index on the fly. Let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is cheat. I'm going to go Google search real quick, G200, and see exactly what you're trying to do in a quick, so it's turn mill. Give me a quick second here. Of course, this YouTube account has ads turned on. So presumably, are you referring to multi-channel? Let me get back to my OBS so I can see your chat. Oh, okay. I get, Brett, I see what your question is. So without live tooling, like if you were technically no. So trying to, in Fusion, you cannot use a turning tool to create kind of like a broached hex, right? Like you can't an external hex using nothing more than like, you know, your part off tool, right? It will not go around and follow that hex with the variance in X. E200 index on the fly. What machine are you running? Ninja or Nijdi? I'm sorry, man. I'm going to butcher that. You guys' YouTube channel names are priceless in some cases. Haas ST25. Let's take a look. So you're trying to use G200 on a Haas ST25. What I'm going to do is, first and foremost, we're going to go ahead and remove the machine from this one. And I'm going to do what you guys usually do to me, is you send me some wild things. And somebody in chat is probably going to chime in and say you need to do this. And they're not wrong. They're usually right. We got a ST25. We're going to go ahead and copy that over. And then you want to do, this is how I do this, guys. So you guys want to know how I do stuff? Here you go. I pull up the post. We're going to look for G200. In this case, I'm not seeing G200, of course. But if we search 200, there's nothing in here for a G200. But now, knowing that you want a Haas G200, let's go ahead and pull up Haas G200. Index the turret in the process of making a rapid move. I like this, and I also really like the fact that if George Roberts is out there, he could probably answer this question quite well. So is that's what you're referring to, right? G200 allows you to index the turret while in the process of making a rapid move. So if you wanted to retract away from your part and index your tool all in one shot, am I correct? Give me a sec here. I've actually clicked over to another screen. So if you're talking, I'm on Haas's website so you guys can see this. I'll bring it over for you. Then I can get my lovely chat pulled back up. All right, so we're on the Haas website, G200. So natively, it's not in these post processors. However, everything is addable, right? So UW, optional, required tool, number offset. Okay, so using 200 change. Okay, so what they're doing is outputting a fast change location. So to say the least, is it possible? Yes, everything is possible. Now, based on where and how you're going to set everything else, unclamp, current position, moves X. Okay, cool. So yeah, so seeing how they're calling this out, so they're calling their tool number, and then later on they're doing a G200. So we know we can call it tool number. It's the matter of the U, W, X, and Z position. which we can actually pull that if we wanted to from like our G53 settings, if that makes sense. Or you can create something that would require you to input those fields, right? So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but pulling up this Haas post that we already have, if you don't have the debugger installed, I highly recommend it. But if I was to create a simple file here, so we're actually going to do turning because this is not a mill turn post. And let's just say we were going to do a face, right? Actually, we'll do a tool change. But as you're going to see here is we can input that data based on the location that we want to use that information, right? So if I was to go here to T101, as you're seeing, this is the insert tool call block, right? So if I wanted to, and again, some of you guys are going to judge me on this. I'm just trying to give you a rough idea of how or where to do this. But you could add a right block. And usually what I do is I want to make sure that it's where I want it. So I just put in test. Tends to work really good. This is how my brain works, guys. Probably completely wrong. But now we can see I'm getting that test right after T100 or 101. If I scroll down, T202 test, right? So now I know I'm going to want to put some information in here, right? So I could put G200. Again, I could add, my comma or my space, however you're going to structure this out. Here's my tool format, right? We'll add that in there. Again, I'm going to hit save. And as you guys are going to start to see, we now have G200. We have the T202, things of that nature, which is what Haas is kind of telling us that we need. Our U, W, X, and Z position is all variables that we could make. We could put that in that post dialog. And I say that because when you guys go to post out, you have that ability. As you see, there's a lot of different integers that you could put in. There's the safe retract positions. We could actually add those there and then pull those properties and plug it in so that it goes to that quick change position as he's requesting. So I'm not going to go too much further into it. It is starting to get a little heavy on the post edits to do something like that. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to work more offline with you on that. So I see JC, what type of toolpath can I use to deburr the bottom of a hole with a lollipop tool? Are you talking like an intersect hole? Why do you guys always ask me about this stuff? So you can use the deburr toolpath to go in and basically deburr an intersect. So what I'm going to do is I am going to draw a rough part like always. And let's go ahead and throw a rectangle around this. And then if I wanted to extrude this upwards, lastly, we're going to throw another hole in one of these sides, put it on center just to be nice to everybody today, right? So as you can see, either I'm trying to do a bottom of an edge or I'm trying to do an intersect location, right? So as always, I have no mental capacity of what scale is when it comes to this stuff. But as you're going to see is if I go in and I do milling, X, Y, Z, this is on a mill. I can now use the deburr toolpath to be able to set up and do something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and use deburr. I'm going to go out, pick my tool as always. We're just going to go with nothing more than a lovely ball end mill. We'll have to make some changes to this. And then from that, if you're using a 4th axis or a 5-axis type setting, and then from there, I'm going to select what I want to deburr. What you're going to see me do is I'm going to pick that edge right there. And in most cases, I'm going to hit OK and hope for the best. But I have a feeling this tool is going to be more of my problem for clearance. And again, that's just the size of that part. Now, what you are seeing is Fusion trying to do it from both sides of that hole with spinning it all the way upside down. And of course, putting my tool through the bottom of my table. So what I would do is I would go in and do a little bit more work to this. We would go ahead and say, I want tool axis limits. I don't want my machine to tilt more than 90 degrees. And then you'll see it'll do its best without wrapping all the way down and around my part, right? So as you can see, based on my tool clearance, that's my problem here, is I can only get so far down in there to machine that lower lip, right? So if I go ahead and swap out to design, let's just, for the fun of it, add some dimensions finally to my parts. Let's say this was 6 inches, and now this guy is much bigger. Again, we go back to manufacture. I'm just going to regenerate this quickly. But you'll see now, because I have tool clearance, again, tool holders, all that fun stuff is eligible to be done here. Well, I can also use that same method if I wanted to. In this case, I've just duplicated my tool path. I'm going to go off the bottom edge here. And now you're going to see is, depending on how well I can get down there with tool clearances, in this case, it's telling me, you know, you just can't get down there with that tool. So this is where I may modify this tool in particular. You know, let's just say the cutter sticks out 6 inches, something obnoxious, right? So we need that tool to be at least yay long. Now it's an obnoxious tool. We may be able to get it now as you're seeing, right? So if you're trying to do it now in the world of 3-axis, this is where it's going to get a little ugly, because is based on the tool you use. Now, I can't remember if I can use a lollipop here, but we're going to go for it because I always feel like being gutsy with this. And as some of you may or may not know, those of you out there that do this every day have such a fun time telling me, oh, I wouldn't do it that way or I wouldn't do it this way. I get it, guys, 100%. There's a reason I ride a desk and a laptop now, long much more than I did in the past. I enjoy my air conditioning, even though I don't have air conditioning here. So again, we have a lollipop cutter. I'm going to go ahead and take my multi-axis back to 3-axis, and we're going to see what we can come up with. So again, based on a lollipop cutter and utilizing 3-axis machining, again, 3-axis, we're not doing any tilting. We can actually deburr the bottom edge of that bore using a lollipop cutter. Again, shaft size, the size of the sphere that you're using, same rule applies. Again, I'm going to duplicate this one more time. If I wanted to stay 3-axis and do an intersect of a hole, again, same outcome. I could duplicate again. To go from the outside working in, this time we're going to say tool orientation. Maybe you're on a 4th-axis, right? So we tilt our part over. I'm still machining that same exact edge there, except we're coming in from the end of my part. Again, that intersect of those two bores, I'm able to deburr that cross-section, right? So JC, I hope that answers your question. I see a ton of people coming and going. I see 17 of you out there right now. I know it does suck that some of you guys are probably saying like, well, you have to have the deburr toolpath to do it. And you're not wrong. You kind of do. There was a very, very old hacked up way you could do stuff. Probably shouldn't show you this, but you could do some things with trace. And it's kind of funny because if I do a trace toolpath up here at the top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say cutter comp left and then do some things with stock to leave. And what you're going to see is initially I get my path around here up at the top, right? Now, it's not realistic to do it this way. This is why I don't like to show this way anymore. But if I go back in there and I do something that involves, one, you need some lead in and lead out. And as you're seeing, there's only vertical lead in. But I can come down and I can actually set this up to go to a certain location, right? So I can do a pass extension or you can do an axial offset. So if I said negative, I don't even know how thick we made this, but if I say -2, what you're going to notice is it's brought that down, right? So again, I got to do a lot of messing around, a lot of like trigonometry and math to figure out how to force this tool to do what I think you guys all saw me do within minutes, right? Like this is the value. For those of you out there wondering about the machine or the manufacturing extension, I would tell each and every one of you, including your bosses you're trying to convince, if we can literally just save you 30 minutes a week of programming, it pays for itself. So it's worth every penny, even for simple stuff. Like if I had a Fadal 4020 in my garage and I just made cross holes in square blocks, to burn those edges alone, it may not save me 30 minutes in programming. It's going to save me 30 minutes of deburring parts that come out of the machine, right? That's the big thing about this. And I'm not trying to sell you guys on it. Obviously, I got to put the sales hat on, right? Throw up the old, hey, you know, buy me, come view my videos and hit me with the old buy me a beer, right? Oh, there it is. I got a Stream Deck now and a fancy microphone arm, you guys. Look at this. Look at this. Moving up in the world. Awesome. In the meantime, any of you guys have any other questions? JC, I'm awesome to see that that actually has helped you out, and that's a different way to look at it. I assume I've also scared a few of you when you saw how fast I can deburr these intersects. That one drives people crazy. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and pull back up Discord. Anybody wants to join Discord, you're more than welcome to. There's no limits on being able to join. Obviously, you can join us there. We're obviously on Facebook, not so much on Instagram. You can also put in support tickets directly for us. So if you're watching this at a later time, I do have that ability. Always send in a support ticket, send us an email, present the problem. We use a different method around here where we believe in if you have a question and we get that question more than 3 times, we love making video content about it because you're not the only one with that issue, right? I joke about this, but everybody does the same thing in machining. We're all turning big blocks into little blocks or big round parts into smaller round parts, right? Like that's the game we play. Any other questions outside of that? It looks like it got a little slow in chat. I'm going to go ahead and scroll through and make sure I didn't miss anything. Brett, like I said, is you're not going to be able to do the hex turning with a lathe tool technically inside of Fusion. However, there is other Autodesk products we can help you to do something like that if it is something you find yourself doing quite a bit of. Excuse me there. Make sure we got everybody's questions. I know we had a visit from Autodesk. George is awesome again. He's one that always listens to me. I don't know how he's the one that ends up listening. Any other questions you guys have, feel free to reach out. Maybe it's time for the top of the hour break. Is it time for the break? Let me see here. We've been going for an hour and 11 minutes. What time is it? 2:06. I think I'm going to take a break here real quick. I will be back in 5 minutes, guys. As you can imagine, doing all this stuff, I need a drink of water from time to time. All right, and we're back once again. Brett, I did see your question before you removed it, and technically we would have you look at a software called Feature Cam or Part Maker. That would have the ability to do what you need it to do, and I'm more than happy to consult with you on that. You could shoot me an email at any time. Understandable, it is a little wild that Fusion doesn't do it, but it is kind of more of a niche thing, and we've seen in Fusion that these nichier things tend to rely on the more mature products at Autodesk still until that day arrives. So, as I've said, guys, if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw those questions in chat. I'm happy to help out in any way I can. Any complaints or problems or issues that you've had throughout the week, or things that you specifically want to see done inside of Fusion 360. In the meantime, I'm just going to keep playing around with Deburr. As you guys can see, you can do lots of fun stuff like deburr the bottom edge of your part as long as there's room. I am hearing my phone go wild. Let's just make sure that nobody's going crazy there. Not so much. Obviously, people come and go from these videos quite a bit. We did just break 100 viewers. That's always fun. I'm glad to see 100 different viewers throughout our first hour is a blast. Question is can you guys provide more content for me to show live here so that we can continue to grow this channel and continue to have more and more feedback from our customers? Floor is all yours. Anybody wants to see anything in particular? We did visit something about doing a tooling ball, getting the tooling ball set up inside of Fusion. I guess I'll go back and play around with these tool paths a little bit. That's one of my favorite ones. X clearance trimmed at clearance. Reason why we're getting that error, so you guys know, it's because of our clearances here. So our x-axis is getting trimmed because this clearance and this clearance is technically having a conflicting system on that very first path. So what we could do is we could actually lower this here, and that should remedy our clearance issue as you saw in that error. And that's exactly what it did. It's now got rid of that error in that tool path. Okay. No problem. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. I'm going to pull up my absolute favorite part, I think, for fixing machine sims. So give me a second here to get that open. And that is going to be this lovely little electronics enclosure. Hopefully everybody's having a good weekend. You guys are all here watching me mess with things live, so I can only imagine. Either you all got long cycle times like that one guy, I can't remember, a few weeks back, or you're already off work, hopefully. So you want the mini mill. Which mini mill are you using in particular? Is it the standard mini mill or is it mini mill 2? I see a question about multi-channel. So currently, Fusion does not directly support multi-channel. Oh, just recently, though, I did partner with another reseller that has an amazing approach to being able to do multi-channel as well as machine sim for mill turns with utilizing Fusion as your programming system. And if you want to see or hear more about that, feel free to go ahead and send me a message directly, and I'm happy to get you guys connected. Did the 3D adaptive bug that we discovered 2 weeks ago get fixed? I don't know. We're going to have to check that out. Your choice. Mine is actually the super mini mill, so I had to edit through the builder. Oh, okay. Is there a super mini mill in here now? I don't see a super mini mill, but a normal mini mill for sure. Let's go ahead and select this. We're going to go ahead and download this model. I am going to stick this in a folder that I'll never open up again. Give that a sec. We do not need the Haas connector. I do not have a Haas machine here at my house. It seems the part is out in the middle of nowhere. That's because we were working with a gantry router earlier for a customer. There we go. So there's my part floating around in space. If I was to go in and do a simulate with machine, It does not seem that my tool is out in the middle of nowhere. I will tell you though, Bearded Works, and I've seen this a lot, sometimes it gets broke. If you actually go out and unselect your machine, now the first thing you need to do is you need to go to the document and find that machine and remove it. This is what I recommend to a lot of my customers. So as you can see, I'm removing it from the document. And then you could go back out and, of course, grab that machine and bring it back in. That will fix it. Now, hearing that you have modified your machine, there's a lot of things that you might have to go back to Machine Builder and define where that tool actually sits. If you want to send me your machine as well, I'm happy to take a look. The 3D adaptive bug. I don't know. Let's see. Let's go find a part that I could do some 3D adaptive clearing on and see if we can break it, right? We'll go ahead and give this a minute. We're in the dreaded pinwheel right now. Oh, there we go. Always great to see on live Fusion, right? Yours truly has smashed the system, streaming video and everything else all at the same time. So let's go ahead and restart this in the background. Bearded Works, I see your question again. Is there a way to remove the machine from multiple files? I would need to see a little bit more, but basically it's in that current document. You would have to remove it. So usually it only affects one document. So if it's affecting multiple parts across multiple different things, I would tell you at the end of the day that you should go out and fix it at the machine definition, like open up Machine Builder and repair it there. Or is it only affecting one part? That's commonly what I see. So again, we're back. Let's go ahead and get my screen share back going. I need to remember what part were we doing last week when I was breaking, or 2 weeks ago when we were breaking the software. I know we were using adaptive clearing, and it was also based off, was it rest machining? I can't remember. Bearded, like I said, feel free to send over your machine sim. I'm happy to pop it open here in real time and take a look. Man, I'm trying to remember, guys. What were we doing? I gotta go watch my own video live on my own YouTube broadcast. I know we were doing roughing. What were we roughing on? Do you guys remember? Rest machining on a second set. That's right. So I should be able to force this on just about anything. Let's start easy. Let's take it simple. We'll pull the enclosure back out here real quick. She goes. It's out of the way. Need to scrap everything that we did on this part. Actually, let's do this now. Let's keep that because I thoroughly do enjoy having that. Whew, had to mute myself so I didn't blow out somebody's eardrums. All right, 2.2, let's go, I don't know, 3.5, 1.5. Give it lots of material to work with, right? And we do not need a machine, so let's get rid of that machine. All right, 3D adaptive clearing. You guys guess it? Yeah, always, right? 1/2 inch end mill. And we need stock turned on so we can see. And then if we duplicate our setup, stock from preceding, continuous rest. There we go. And does not look like it. But let's just make sure. We have rest machining. Yeah, it looks like it's still there. Remaining stock. It's not recognizing remaining stock from the first setup into the second setup. So presumably I did that quick, but I think it's still the same case that we shouldn't be machining around the outside of this part. Going back the other way, considering we have no boundary and we're saying look at the remaining stock, right? So if we did silhouette, though, the silhouette wouldn't help us because that would still be the same size as the previous setup, right? I don't think there's going to be air cutting. We could turn on air cutting, but that's a little better. But it still doesn't make sense why it would be machining the walls that are there, right? Something doesn't make sense. Unless it's still, you know what it could be? We might have to grab another part. Let me just see here real quick. So is that tool going 750 deep on that first path? That's the real question, right? Oh, info. Well, we're 70 deep. We're not 750. But why would it make that path, right? That would be my only explanation that we could see right now, as funny as it is it's just, even though nothing is there, it's still trying to go that deep. But we did see by reducing air cutting, it's not going all the way down the outside of the part. I guess good example for that. I think we all know there's only been 15 updates in the last 2 weeks on Fusion. I think that's it. I think by turning on reduce air cutting, that might be the solution to the problem that we've seen. For some reason, that reduce air cutting is avoiding those areas. Because I guess the other thing we could do is we could try forcing ignore stock less than 40. But it's still machining around the outside of our part, as we saw like 2 weeks ago. Cool. Any other questions outside of that? I'm trying to remember. If one of you guys want to go out and watch that video that we did 2 weeks ago where we've discovered that bug, go ahead, go watch it, and tell me what part I was using, because I would be happy to bring that part back up and see if that reduce air cutting actually fixed the issue. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what part we were using also. The Workflow Wednesday part? No, it wasn't. We were doing, where is it? We were doing a cool part, weren't we? I think we were doing something like this, weren't we? Correct me if I'm wrong. Go. There's that. Oh, we were doing that. Oh, where is the original part? Fine. If we were doing something like this, we're going to step up the complexity now, if you guys are wondering. 3D adaptive clearing. And give that a second to think about it. Meantime, we can actually create second setup. And ding. See what happens. You guys all still hear me all right out there? No, my audio can get quite wild. Now that I got a microphone arm, I feel like a big fancy fella. I think they fixed it. I really think they did. I think they watched my video, didn't like my content like you all should, and then they fixed the issue, it looks like. Because it looks like when we were using pocket clearing, it seemed it worked just fine, but now I don't even have, reduced air cutting turned on. And it seems like on a part like this, it's got no problem using rest machining from setup 1 into setup 2 and recognizing what's not done. Ogden, can you confirm on your side whether or not that's the case? In the meantime, any other questions from you guys? I see you guys slowing down. It must be the end of the day, of course. You guys getting off early? I guess it's the beginning of the month, right? It is. Today's the 6th. This is when you guys send me problems. I don't know what it is. You guys all rush to get stuff out at the end of the month and you ignore problems and then you just dump them all on me at the beginning of the month. Any questions outside of that? Anybody else have anything they're curious about or any problems they're having in the software or what would help you? Anything in particular that you guys would like to see? You guys catch my content on Wednesday where actually 2 weeks ago when I did the simplify parts? How'd you guys like that content? gonna go ahead and scrub Discord here real quick. Make sure nobody's putting in support tickets behind my back. How's everybody's week been otherwise? That's always a good question. For those of you that have just joined, I saw the number shoot up quite a bit. Feel free to ask any questions you have about Fusion or any curiosities. We're not limited to just the CAM workspace over here at jitcadcam. We also do quite a bit in the CAD and simulation and all the other fun areas of Autodesk Fusion 360. Or should I say just Autodesk Fusion now? It's no longer Fusion 360, right? See what other fun parts we could work on. Actually, were we doing something on... Try this on another part. You never know. Let's see what we can come up with, right? Here's a part where we did a lot of bad tool paths. Guys, don't use 2D unless you have to. But I would be curious if we... Let's go. Can't do proceeding until you have something else. There. All right, so let's do another setup here real quick. Z. Drag this up. Go ahead and kick back to proceeding. Oh, stock model is missing because we don't have a tool path on it yet, right? Let's do some facing. Here we go. Highest. Stock top. Model top. Oh, it's because our stock is like the same size. Okay. I'll just bump this up. Quick. What is going on with this thing? I'm having not a good day. Oh, of course, it's going to do everything that I don't want it to do. You guys see this stuff? This is what I put up with. This is what you guys put in tickets for me. As I reordered the one from the other, it tried to do from proceeding in the first operation, which wouldn't allow me to face off my part. There we go. And let's see. Where's that outside profile? Oh, we're going to drag this guy. Oh, I see some more questions coming in. All right, cool. I don't have to sit here and program boring parts or try to force Fusion to do bad things, right? Let's see if we, real quick, we're going to go ahead and do this one more time. Adaptive clearing, remaining. And we're going to put that as the first operation and see if it recognizes here. It still thinks there's stuff around the outside of the part. Oh, that's why. Let's change our selection. Only go down to here. There we go. Because our flute length on our end mill, it was cutting down below our stock. But let's see if rest machining now works. See, there it did it again, where it's trying to go down and around. But I assume the reduce air cutting should remedy that problem. It is. So it looks like, for the most part, it was fixed. What else do we got here? So, got woodworking tool store. All right. Can you emboss text that would support 3D printing in a different color? Yeah, 100%. Nonetheless, that I actually have a I have a 3D printer that I've done stuff like this before. But if you want it to emboss a set of text, it's going to really come down on what you want to do or how you're achieving it. I'm going to do it a couple of different ways. First thing is, of course, as you guys know, we need to create a profile. And then what I'm going to do is just put some text in here, right? So this is going to be sample text. There we go. Obviously, my cap locks is on, so let's go back and change that. And let's go ahead and extrude that out. So if this was my plate, and let's go ahead and go to that sketch, and then I'm going to extrude now. Not that, but the text itself. So if I wanted to actually raise the text up, as you can see, I can extend it upwards. If I want to do it in another color, what I may need to do is actually do these as new bodies. And what you're going to see over here in the body area is everything is now segregated and separated, right? So if I wanted to do the letters in a different color, because they are a separate entity, if I was to export this for 3D printing, I would have that possibility. Now, I don't know if they've ever actually fixed it, but if you were to go to the Make button, and I wanted to put this on a print utility, if you go through to select your parts, what you're noticing here is I can't select all of them in one shot to export them, right? So this was a trick that Jason over at Autodesk, you may have seen his content showed me. I don't know if they've ever fixed it or patched it, but if you go in and you select everything and then create a selection set, if you do that make now, and we're going to send it to my Bamboo Labs or whatever you're going to use, I could actually use the selection set to grab everything. See, oh, they must have patched it. You used to be able to grab everything in one shot and fake it through the system. But that's all right, because you could still do this in a lot of different other ways where we can actually say export. You can export this as an STL for your machine. Again, you can export the entire file, allowing you to open that up and then determine in your slicing software what bodies are to be printed with what nozzle or what color you want. Now, I'm going to jump back over here real quick. So that would be, again, is I did, text in a positive form. If you wanted to change that from being text in a positive form, let's say you want it to do recessed text and then make fillers, we can also do that. So what I would actually do first and foremost is we would cut that body out, right? And then from there, I would do a secondary extrude using the floors of these shapes. And what that would allow me to do then is to pull back the other way. Again, still doing new bodies. As you can see, again, separating these out where if I turn one off, I now have a pocket for that letter to sit in. Again, you can overlap them, and I don't know about whatever printer you're using. My Bamboo Labs allows me to actually print them just like that and actually get that to set where it's printed together, but it is the different colors starting out, again, with your nozzle wiping and everything like that. So I hope that actually answers your question. Automated drawings. I haven't seen you in that workspace, at least you think. So you want to see me in drawings. All right. Yeah, I mean, we could, yeah. So let's do that first. I'll do drawings. Don't worry. We'll get to drawings here in a second, but I mean, we are finishing the walls with 0 stock to leave. I don't have stock to leave on. I mean, we could force stock to leave 0, but I still don't. I mean, and again, maybe Autodesk, like I said, is maybe they did fix it. And it does seem like since then, let's go ahead and turn off reduce air cutting. Or maybe they're out there to tell us a way that, yeah, see, even with the idea of turning on stock to leave, even though it's 0, it just seems like something is happening in the background that we don't know, right? Like, because if I was to go in and turn off stock to leave on my roughing, now you're seeing we're going all the way around the part still, as if it still thinks there's material there. But for some reason, if we turn on reduce air cutting, it no longer goes around the outside of the part. It's kind of the damnedest thing, right? So me personally, I've used Fusion 360 for slicing. I don't think there's anything too terrible about it. It's good by all means. I wish there was more to the slicing side of Fusion when we talk more about, let me back this up a couple of steps here. Oh, you are. There we go. And let's extrude this lettering out the other way and just make this one body. So the slicing in Autodesk Fusion is good to some extent, but me personally, I use a Bamboo Labs and it's not supported by Fusion unless it is all of a sudden. But when I used to use like a, didn't use a Prusa, a Creality, like CR10, things like that, it worked quite well, right? So, I mean, it's not anything bad on Autodesk for this. I just think at the end of the day, everybody has their own opinion on what slicer they use. I know they're lacking, in my opinion, Autodesk is lacking really good baseline settings to help most of you guys out and get going. But I mean, at the end of the day, Cura also does like wonders, right? So I've used Fusion. I like it. I'm not a crazy 3D printer, guys. You got to get that in your mind. I do it to print like brackets and like I have something over on the corner of my desk. It holds an Xbox controller and my headset, you know, when I'm not using my headset. But I'm not out here printing super wild stuff like most people. It's why I personally bought the Bamboo Labs, is because that thing won't run for 2 months, and then I'll turn it on and it will immediately print without all the tinkering, right? So with that, let's go ahead and jump over to the drawings workspace. What do we want to see in the drawings workspace? So I'm more than happy to do a drawing on parts. So I did see, do you want to see me do a automated drawing, or do you just want to see me do a normal drawing? I guess is the normal drawing or an automatic drawing. I'll give you a minute to answer that. A good way to end this session this week. Up to me. I mean, well, obviously I'm either the laziest or most efficient person you've ever met, but if I was to do it, let's go ahead and just go with a standard sheet of paper. I do like the fact that you could do horizontal versus vertical. And me personally, I would just do an automatic drawing, right? So it's going to take a moment to do it, of course. It's doing everything in the background. From what I'm told, it's AI that's setting it all up. To me, if I was, you know, again, doing things for a shop floor or working with certain parts, or my customer doesn't provide me drawings, like I use the automatic way of doing drawings, it's kind of standardized, right? I still need to clean it up. As you guys are seeing, you can, of course, change your templates on how you want to call this out. Yes, some of these are just not in clean spaces by any means, and we could always reorganize them after the fact. But just like that, for me to go out and very quickly create a drawing, to me, it's quite awesome. Honestly, I don't see anything too crazy by it. So again, once you have it, though, you can go in and you can tweak everything to whatever it is that you want, right? So if you want to move its position, you want to make everything colored, completely doable. Like for me to do all these dimensions by hand, first and foremost, I'm going to give you guys my opinion, but not call out all these dimensions. There's a reason why I wouldn't call out all these dimensions, and that's because I drew a model. Where's that model at? We got to get rid of this other model, right? Right? If I was designing something, I made a model. You're going to machine the model. My drawing comes from the model, right? Like the model is the actual kind of like, what would be the terminology? Is the fixed point for everything, right? We've all seen the drawings where like holes, like where's a hole here, right? This, for some reason, somebody uses tolerances, right? And they say deviation, and then they put in such a weird deviation, if that makes sense, right? Like they do, it's like +3 +1. It's not plus and minus, right? For some reason, it's like plus and plus. And you're like, what do they actually want? Like, why couldn't they just model the hole that way? But again, to me, a lot of these dimensions on here, I wouldn't even ask for, because I would make everything off the model. So what I tend to tell customers is like, if you were to send me a part, and this is a ±5 part, unless this is outside ±5, why do I need, you know, that dimension, right? Like, here you go. This is going to be ±5. I don't have 4 places turned on. We could fix that here in a second. But like, why do you need to dimension something if it's what the base dimensioning of the drawing is, right? Like now, if that was plus or minus like 1 thou, that would be a completely different story, right? So that's just my take on it, that everybody has their own opinion, but that would be where you could go through and you could set that up and you could make those decisions, right? I do see a few other questions coming in. I'm assuming you guys are going to ask me here in a second about how to change document settings, as well as, you know, how many decimal places, things like that, right? So let's see here. We have 3D models for missing dimensions. Yeah, I mean, I've seen that on a ton of drawings. Like 3D model succeeds the actual drawing. Like the drawing is almost become just like, here's the name of it. Here's a rough like idea of the size. Like that's what I would tell people. Like, give me the rough dimensions of the part on the drawing so that I can know what size stock to order, if that makes sense. So again, as you guys are seeing here, as I'm now in the actual settings of this document, you guys have full control over this. They've done so much with this. I am absolutely speechless. I don't think I've been in the drawings workspace in like a month, and I feel like it's foreign grounds, but as you can see, you can control line widths now. I know people used to complain about colors. Like, you can get real crazy with anything and everything inside of here now, which is amazing that they've given this type of customization to each and every one of you to be able to set things up, right? So I am not going to spend a ton of time in here, but it does give me quite the good idea for some future content. Obviously, maybe I should make I used to do a segment called CAD for CAM. Maybe I need to do a drawings one in CAD for CAM for like drawings for machinist, right? But again, you guys have full customization. Again, as you saw me do with that hole, I tried to add more decimal places. I can go ahead and add that out to linear precision of 4. Now you see everything as populated. Again, if it needs trailing zeros, if it doesn't need trailing zeros, this is where, like, again, if you brought me a part and you're like, I want you to make this, I'd be like, okay, cool. What's a tapped hole and what's outside of whatever the tolerances of the drawing, right? An animation? Do you want to see a animation as in something moving, or you want me just to show you like an exploded view? Cosmin, you didn't miss anything. The good news is yours truly does this live and leaves it up on his channel so that you guys can critique it and tell me how bad it is at any time. So you can feel free to start it over and watch it from the beginning. We've only been doing drawings now for a couple of minutes, but if you wanted to see animation, animation gets a little wild. I'm trying to think. I should have something in here. I used to have an off-road buggy with like suspension and everything. Now, this is going to be fun, guys. I'm going to warn you. It's been a little bit since I've been in animation to do animation, of course. But let's see what they've done different in animation. So I'm trying to think. I need let's go with a Kurt Weiss. I think we all know what a Kurt Weiss is, at least. Give old Fusion a second to think about it. We got a Kurt Weiss. I know I forever ago told him that, like, hey, if I make joints with motions, why can't I use that in the animation workspace, right? And to say the least, it looks like nothing has really changed here. Again, if you guys are doing drawings and that, this is a good use case. As you can see, I have an assembly. And with an assembly, what I'm going to do is go ahead and do an auto explode all levels. So first off, of course, you got to pick something. And then the nice thing is, as you guys can see, is it's going to take all of my pieces in my assembly and it's going to explode that out. So that if I was to make a drawing or I need to make an assembly drawing, as you can see, everything is now actually moved to where I need it, right? And this is a good thing to talk about since we wanted to go down the path of drawings today, right? So at a low level, as you're seeing, is I can actually do a drawing, and in your drawing, you have the ability to actually add in an exploded view of something. Now, I need to remember how that happens, but let's go ahead and see what I can come up with. We're going to add a new base view. And then, yep, just like it used to be, is under my representation, I could go to storyboard. And now with that storyboard, as you guys see, is I now have that exploded view that we just created under the animation workspace, right? So again, is very simply in this storyboard, and we can make multiple storyboards so you guys know, is I created that exploded view that carries over to my drawings. And like most things in Fusion, I'm probably going to bite my tongue, but let's go ahead and see. Is can we hypothetically change? We don't want to repeat. Can we manual explode? Yeah, that's good. But can I, let's see here. I see you guys in Discord. Give me a minute here. Let me get Discord popped open. You guys out there? And then let's go back and see if we can edit. I know we can do all these moves individually, but can you re-edit an already done exploded view? That's a good question. What do you guys all answer it, right? I see you guys bickering back and forth. I love to see it. You guys helping each other out before I get a chance to get to it. It's always a fun time, right? So one kind of cool thing with the storyboard is because of the auto explode, if we were to hit play, you could see everything moves here. Now, I know one of you guys were asking what would happen is if we created, I'm going to create a brand new storyboard. This is going to be clean. Now, if you want to animate something to make a video, what you're basically going to have to do is kind of do everything very manual. So let's say, for example, I want to show this jaw opening up, right? So what you're going to see is very first, I need to make a move. And now you can see that component has moved, right? Now, what I may want to do is the amount of time that it takes to move, I can adjust that, right? As well, if I wanted to move the camera while it happens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit play. And what you're going to see is now we're zooming away because yours truly scrolled his mouse. But while we're scrolling away, the jaw is now opening up, right? So there was a distance traveled over time is the way the storyboard is built out. The problem with this is, of course, is now if I wanted to move something else, I would have to also grab that component, make it move, whatever that distance was, right? And then I would also need that move command down in my storyboard. Again, this is where everything gets a little tricky and you add more and more things. Or in the case of this, when we did that move, again, there's our component. Again, guys, I'm no super crazy expert here. We may need to actually add another storyboard to this, right? So if we go start from the end of the previous, and now what you can see is if I wanted to move my next component, now these are going to move at different times. So I do want to make sure that you guys are aware of how this works. But again, we'll drag this out. And if we were to start our storyboard or go back through our storyboards is what you're seeing. But now we have that first move coming in. And then from there, we'll either jump to our next move, give it a second here. Or we could manually jump to our next move, of course. And then from there, as you're seeing, the next storyboard shows the next motion. It gets a little ugly quick, right? And I'm not saying anything bad about the animation side of Fusion. I've used it quite a bit for things in the past. Works really good for exploded views, don't get me wrong. But there's a reason there's animation software out there, right? I've had people ask me, like, can you show a gun cycling through its system? Can you? Yes. Is it going to take a lot to do it? 100%. But with that being said, I am going to turn back to you guys. It does look like we are getting down to the end here. I do see you guys go back and forth and chat a little bit. So as we're seeing, I just want to glance through here. You guys are talking about being Romanian, but yet actually Poland. I love it that you guys are all over the world coming to my streams on what I assume is very late or very early Saturday in some places. But with that, if you guys don't have any more questions at this moment, I do have to hit you with the good old, feel free to like, subscribe, share this content with anybody and everybody you guys know. If you guys learned something new or want to support in different ways, we offer everything from training to customization of post-processors, even on-site or video training. We can do just about anything and everything when it comes to Autodesk Fusion. As well, if you don't want to go down that path or you don't need to and you still found this useful and want to give a little extra, you could always buy me a beer using the link below. Or as those of you that aren't in North America have to do, you could do the super chats. You could use our email on PayPal. There's a lot of ways to buy me a beer by all means. I also want you guys to know, don't forget to go ahead and get notifications to our other content from our channel. We are doing 2 streams a week, if not more, if the demand is there. And as always, I want to leave you guys with it. It's not what you know, it's who you know. You know Phil Brown over here at jitcadcam, and we're always happy to help you in any way we can. And with that, I hope you guys, let me double check for questions. Have a great rest of your weekend and get rested up for Monday. Thanks, guys.